multiple cases, screen protectors, Joy-Con wheel grips for Mario Kart. But my favorite things that they shipped in this box were these. This is their Switch card case, which holds up to 40 Switch and Switch 2 cartridges. It's hard shell, and it is a great way to store your physical games. They also sent this, which is their hard shell carry case that makes me a lot less nervous about chucking my Switch into my backpack. Plus, it doesn't take up tons of room either. It is very thin, and you can even store your favorite games right in the front cover. They also have this soft shell case that goes around the entire unit and has really nice thick grips on the back to make it far more ergonomic when you are playing in handheld mode. If you want to check out all the JSOX accessories, use the link in the description down below that like button. And a huge thank you to JSOX for being a longtime sponsor here on Nerd Nest and for sponsoring this video. Next up on the things that I don't like, storage. 256 gigs is kind of laughable at this point. And the reason why it is laughable is not really Nintendo's fault. It's more a third-party issue because Nintendo is very good at compression. In fact, for the Switch 2, they even patented something that will allow them to shrink the file size of these huge, massive textures and then compress them on the fly using probably something in the NVIDIA chipset that they have. And that allows them to keep their game size low. And Nintendo's very, very good at keeping game sizes low, even for really, really big games. But third-party companies, they usually don't. They just ship it, and it takes up as much room as it has to take up. When you combine that with the fact that there's really only 2 versions of the cartridges that you can get for Nintendo Switch. I think that there's like the small one, which I forget the storage size, but it's really small. And then the big ones are like 64 gigabytes. The issue is that, number one, if your game is more than 62 gigabytes, it's not going to fit on one of those cards. But if your game is too big for the small card, but too small to really justify the big card, that means that they're just going to use those downloadable game cards. If they do that, that means you're going to be downloading pretty much all your games. As it stands right now, of all of the physical games that are out, I think only one of them, Cyberpunk 2077, actually ships on a card where the entire game is on the card. I'm talking about third parties, I'm not talking about Nintendo at this point. And because of that, that just means that people are going to have to download, even if they want to go with physical copies. If they want to go to the store, buy a thing that comes in a plastic box that is, by the way, way too big for the cards that are in there, and then put that card in, you still download the stuff off the eShop, and it still takes up a huge amount of storage of your only 256 gigs of storage. That is definitely a problem. When the Switch 1 came out, I was of the belief that 32 gigs was enough. First off, that was 8 years ago. Secondly, it allowed Nintendo to keep the price of the system down, and the SD cards were ubiquitous enough that you could get them relatively cheap with large storage sizes. So it wasn't very expensive to increase the storage of your Switch. Well, with the Switch 2, they're foregoing the SD card and instead using SD Express, which are more expensive and also come in fewer options. That means that people are going to have to pay a little bit extra in order to have a reasonable amount of storage on this system, especially if you are buying this to play a bunch of third-party games. That's not me. I'm buying it to play Nintendo games, but it is definitely irritating. I did end up picking up an SD Express card, and I put it in my Switch, and it's working great. You can find a link to it in the description down below. Moving on to download speeds, I'm not sure if the eShop was completely overwhelmed on launch day, but it took me forever to download Mario Kart World. I decided to run a speed test on my Nintendo Switch. If you don't know how to do that, you can just go into the settings, and then in your internet settings, there's a button right there for speed test. I ran a speed test right now on my Nintendo Switch 2. I got 45.1 megabits per second download speed. My upload speed is 19.5. I ran the exact same test on my phone, sitting in the exact same place here at my desk For my download speeds, I got 193 megabits per second, and my upload speed was 38.8 megabits per second. So the Nintendo Switch 2 definitely seems really slow when it comes to downloading things. And as I talked about in the previous section, when you are going to be downloading lots and lots of games to your system, that is going to be really frustrating. Of course, everybody has different networks. Using two different devices here.